Hi, it's Penny here, and as usual I'm going to be talking about some bookish things. Specifically today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Babysitters Club books and take you through my collection. So these were the most influential books of my childhood. When I was in primary school, I read them all the time. I remember they would always be in the Scholastic book clubs that would be sent out, so you would get every month a little pamphlet with a whole bunch of books, and my mum would always let me choose one to order, and I would always pick the Babysitters Club books. I also have a memory of buying one from the local bookshop, and they were $5. I bought one entirely with 5-cent pieces that I had saved up especially. So if you don't know about this series, it is all about this group of young girls who decide to essentially start a business as babysitters, so parents are able to call this one number and reach a group of reliable babysitters with just one call. But around that, the book series also covers so many different ideas and themes. And I know the series has been getting some interest lately since Netflix did an adaptation of the series, and they have modernized it a bit. But overall, a lot of the themes and ideas are still relevant today. Also, I want to say that this is not the first time that the Babysitters Club books has been adapted for TV. In 1990, there was a TV series made. In 1995, there was a movie. Also, a board game, which I have, and I did play in a Babysitters Club reading vlog I did a year or so ago. It's a long vlog, but I'll link that if you want to check that out. Basically, this has been a really popular series, but today specifically, I wanted to talk about the books. So there are a lot of Babysitters Club books. So in total, there were 209 books in this series. Firstly, we had the main series, which had 131 books. Now, I own 66 of these, which I think is not bad. I own pretty much all of the first 50, and then I think after that I got a little bit old for the series, and so I only picked up some here and there. And I'm pretty sure most of the ones that I own over number 100 I haven't actually read, but since I own some, I should read them at some point. Then, as well as the main series, there were also the super specials. So in the main series, each book would be from a different girl's perspective, but the super specials would have chapters from all the different girls and sometimes other side characters as well, and it would be more of a special adventure. So there were 15 super specials in total, and I owned 10 of them. Again, I owned the first 5, and then most of the first 10. I'm just missing one, and then I only owned one of the last 5. And also, I'm pretty sure I haven't read that last super special that I own. There were also 36 mysteries, which was a surprise to me because I only own 3 mysteries. And there were also 4 super mysteries, which I've never heard of, but I assume they were like the super specials, but mysteries, in that they probably had all the different girls' perspectives. There were also 3 special editions about characters who weren't technically properly in the club, but sometimes were sort of in the club. So there were 2 books from Logan's perspective, the only boy that was almost in the club, but then for some reason they couldn't handle having a boy in the club because all they wanted to talk about was boys and bras, even though I swear no other Babysitters Club meeting that's talked about in the books has boys and bras in it. But apparently when there was a boy there, that's all they wanted to talk about, so they couldn't have him in the club. But these 2 books basically show his perspective and some of the trouble he got because people didn't think that a boy should be a babysitter. And then Shannon was this rich girl that Kristy became friends with in the new neighborhood that she moves to at one point. And I haven't actually read that one because I've never seen it. There were also 6 portrait books, which I have also never seen, but these I believe were the girls writing books as school assignments about their past, so giving some backstory to the different characters. And then in 1999 and 2000 they kind of stopped the main series and they continued on with a Friends Forever series, so it was kind of a reboot to try to get things going again, and they published 14 of those books, and I haven't read any of those either, although I did briefly own 2 of them, but I never read them, and then I got rid of them. And now I have regrets. So, because I like stats, I ran some stats on these books. Firstly, let's have a look at how the books were published over time. So, the books initially started being published in 1986 and went through until 2000 if you count the Friends Forever series. And you can see with all the different types of books that one point they were actually putting out about 20 books a year, and I'm not even talking about the 2 spin-off series, so the Little Sister series, which has like 120 books in it, and there was also California Diaries series that span off from it that had 15 books in it. So there's a lot of books in this world. So it's not a surprise that after the first few years, they actually got ghostwriters in to help with the writing. I think Annie Madden, the main author, still would outline the books, but other people would write them, because you can't really expect people to be spitting out 20 books a year, even when they're like not that thick. But I mean, the super specials are thicker. But even the super specials are only like a couple of 100 pages, and the text is fairly large sized. Still, it's a lot, so they got some ghostwriters in, and that's fine. I'm not mad about it. I also had a look at how the books break down by character. So you can see that the first 4 members of the Babysitters Club, Kristy, Claudia, Marianne, and Stacey, had the most books from their perspective. Dawn, even though she was introduced in book 5, she still has a lot less books because she did move to California later in the series, and so there's less books from her near the end. Mallory and Jessi were introduced in book 14. And then similarly to Dawn, there was less of them near the end, and they also weren't included in the Friends Forever series. You can also see that they didn't get really many mysteries, maybe because they're the younger members in the series and it was decided they're too young for mysteries. There's also a lot less books of Abby, who was introduced quite near the end of the series. Wait, I'll find Abby's first book. So Abby was introduced in book number 90. I've actually never read a book by Abby. I own one Abby book and I haven't even read it. So Abby didn't get many books and I don't really know anything about her. So actually looking at the books that I own, you can see that it's much more even. I mean, I'm very low on Abby, and Mallory and Jessi are slightly lower, but not as low as they are in the overall series. Also, I seem to be quite short of Claudia books, which I don't know why that is. Anyway, I thought what we might do now is just go through each character in the book series and talk about who they are and maybe a few of my favorite of their books. So, firstly we have Kristy. Now, Kristy is the one who created the idea of the Babysitters Club books. In Kristy's a Great Idea, this is when her mum was trying to find a babysitter for her younger brother. She's calling a million people, and Kristy's like, wouldn't it be easier if she only had to make one call? Of course, in the modern day, you'd just have a website, wouldn't you? But never mind. This is from the past, and it's probably still a good idea. So Kristy is very sporty. She's called a tomboy, which isn't really a term that's used anymore these days, but she doesn't really care about what she looks like. She wears turtleneck sweaters and keeps her hair in a ponytail. She's always into these big ideas, so like the Babysitters Club, lots of other events. She at some point runs this little league baseball group, and she's quite blunt and speaks her mind. She also comes from a really big family, and in book number 6, Kristy's Big Day, her mother gets remarried and she ends up with 2 step siblings as well as her 3 brothers that she already has, so she has quite a big family. And I think the first book that I got of Kristy was this one, Kristy and the Secret of Susan, which is where Kristy babysits an autistic girl and learns a lot about autism. When I first read this, I'd never heard of autism before, so I think that was just the beginning of all the things that I learnt as part of reading this series. I also think Kristy and the Mother's Day Surprise was one that I got quite early on. It's in quite good condition considering I've had it since the mid-80s. This one, Kristy organizes to take all the kids away for Mother's Day so that the mothers can just have a nice day relaxing. I think Kristy's Big Day is probably my favorite Kristy cover just because her and Karen look really pretty. Andrew looks less pretty, but I still like it. Also, I think my favorite Kristy book would probably be Kristy and the Snobs. So this is where Kristy has moved to this new richer neighborhood because that's where her stepfather has a big fancy house, and she doesn't feel she really fits in with the neighborhood and some of the neighborhood kids that she meets. But this one, I've read it a few times and I always cry, because in this, their family dog dies and it's just heartbreaking, especially when you're 8 years old. Okay, so then we've got Claudia. Claudia is the artistic one. She always wears really creative outfits. She has snacks hidden all around her room. They have the Babysitters Club meetings in her house because she has a private landline. Who has a landline these days? She also has a really smart sister, which makes her feel quite bad because she doesn't do particularly well in school. What I liked about it is that they always made out like Claudia isn't dumb. Claudia's actually quite smart. She's just not good at school. And I appreciated that. She also has her grandmother living with her, and she has quite a close relationship with her grandmother. Oh, and she's Asian American. So the first Claudia book is number 2, where they are getting these phantom phone calls while they're babysitting, and they're hearing about this person that's breaking into people's houses after calling to see if anyone's home or if it's just like a babysitter that's there. So they're dealing with that. I quite like that one. I do notice that in the adaptions, they often change that storyline quite a lot. They changed it quite a lot in the Netflix adaptation. I'm not sure which one I got first, but it was probably one of these two. In this one, Claudia and the Sad Goodbye, unfortunately her grandmother dies, and that's quite awful. In this one, she is doing some research because Kristy's family has adopted a new baby for the family, and Claudia starts to wonder maybe she doesn't fit in with her family because she's adopted. I think my favorite Claudia cover is probably number 7, Claudia and Mean Janine, which is just about Claudia and her sister Janine working on their relationship. And I did also like this one, Claudia and the Bad Joke, where Claudia breaks her leg while babysitting. Okay, so moving on to Stacey. Stacey is the cool babysitter. She comes from New York. She's really stylish, but she also has diabetes, so she struggles with her health. And in the beginning, she struggles with telling people about her diabetes because when she was first diagnosed, her friends didn't really understand and treated her quite badly because of it. Stacey's also really good at maths, and I appreciated having a character that was good at maths, and I sometimes wonder if the fact that I liked Stacey is what also made me kind of like maths. I know a lot of people don't like maths, but maybe you just needed to read some Stacey books. So the first book about Stacey is number 3, The Truth About Stacey, and this is where they get more into learning about her diabetes and also Stacey facing up to her parents who want to send her to a million doctors and get her on all sorts of crazy treatments for her diabetes, whereas she wants to kind of have more of a balanced lifestyle. I think that the first Stacey book I got is Welcome Back, Stacey. So in number 13, Stacey moves away back to New York, and then her parents get divorced and she moves back to Stony Brook. This was mainly because when they took her out of the series, people complained because they really liked Stacey. They did do an intermediate book while she was still in New York where some of the babysitters come and visit her, but still it wasn't enough for people and they had to bring her back. I think my favorite cover is Stacey and the Mystery of Stony Brook, just because I always thought it was nice and spooky looking. Although I do also kind of like the cover of Stacey's Emergency, where Stacey starts kind of cheating on her diet a bit and her diabetes gets a little bit out of control. Okay, then moving on to Marianne. Marianne is the quiet one of the group. She lives with just her father because her mother died when she was younger, and he's very strict, has a lot of rules on her. So Marianne also dresses quite conservatively, but throughout the series she manages to get her father to loosen up and let her be a bit more fashionable and a bit more of herself rather than what her father wants her to be. She's also the only one in the group that has a long-running boyfriend for most of the series, and that's Logan, who I talked about earlier as being one of the special edition perspectives and a semi-member of the Babysitters Club. She does also have a cat. So the first Marianne book is Marianne Saves the Day, and in this one the Babysitters Club all have a bit of an argument and so they're not really talking, and Marianne has to make new friends. She actually makes friends with Dawn in this book, and as well she has to deal with a sick babysitting charge without having her friends to reach and help her with the problem. And through that she kind of learns that she can handle these problems by herself and she can make new friends. So I like that one. I'm pretty sure the first Marianne book that I got was Marianne and the Search for Tigger. So this is one where Marianne's cat Tigger goes missing and they're looking for him. I always quite liked the cover of Maid Marianne. This is one where she offers to do some housework and some errands in return for sewing lessons, but then it turns out to be a lot more work than she really signed up for. And also, I haven't read this one, but I'm really excited to read The Fire at Marianne's House. This is the last book of the Babysitters Club series and it looks pretty intense. I think I really need to read it. Then moving on to Dawn. So Dawn moves to Stony Brook where the Babysitters Club books are set from California, which is on the other side of America. And she's very stereotypically Californian. She's got blonde hair. She loves the beach. She's vegetarian at least, maybe vegan, but she moves to Stony Brook because her parents get a divorce, and she moves into this really old, weird house with her mother and her brother. And her first book is Dawn and the Impossible 3, so this is just after she's joined the Babysitters Club. She's not really fitting in, but she gets this really difficult babysitting charge, as well as trying to fit into a new town. I know for a fact that my first Dawn book was Dawn on the Coast. This is a book where she goes back to visit her father in California, and she starts thinking that she really likes it there and maybe she should stay. This was the first Babysitters Club book I ever got, so this is what got me into it. And I think at the time, like, my parents had been divorced for a little while, but whenever I would say to people that my parents were divorced, it would seem like a big deal, even though personally it didn't feel like a big deal to me, but it kind of made me feel weird the way that everyone else would make a big deal about it. And so it was kind of nice for me to find a book series where people had divorced parents and it wasn't necessarily a big deal. I also quite liked The Ghost at Dawn's House. In this one, they find a secret passage in their old house that they live in, and things keep appearing in the secret passage. Also, there is a romance between Dawn's mother and Marianne's father, and in Dawn's wicked stepsister, Dawn and Marianne end up moving in together. And I always kind of liked the cover of Dawn's Big Date, just because Dawn looks kind of fashionable and cool, although I think I always felt like she looked more like Stacey on this cover. Okay, so then moving on to the junior members of the Babysitters Club book. So firstly, we've got Mallory. Now, Mallory is the oldest sister of 8 kids, I think. And initially, she was introduced in the series as one of the kids that the Babysitters Club would babysit for, but she was very responsible and helpful, and so they decided when Stacey moved back to New York that they would give Mallory and her friend Jessi a chance to join the club, but with more limited hours and like less responsibilities because they are a year younger. So Mallory is introduced in Hello Mallory. This one, the Babysitters Club is putting Mallory through all sorts of horrible tests, quite unachievable tests, to prove that she's good enough to be part of the Babysitters Club. I'm pretty sure that the first book I got was Mallory and the Trouble with Twins. This is one where Mallory is babysitting for 2 twins who are being forced to always dress the same and be the same. And as she gets to know them, she realizes that that's kind of the problem because they are actually really different people, and she helps them to get their parents to treat them like different people. I always liked the cover of Mallory Pike #1 fan. This one, Mallory tries to track down her favorite author who she discovers lives in town. And there's a few other cool ones. In Get Well Soon Mallory, Mallory gets sick. She has mono, which I believe is glandular fever, and so she basically has to take a break from the club because she's so sick. Also, I know in Poor Mallory, I think her father loses her job, and so that's a little bit stressful for their family, especially with 8 kids. And I also quite like Mallory in the Mystery Diary, where she finds this mysterious diary and does some investigations around that. So then we have Jessi. Jessi is a black girl, and in the books it talks about Stony Brook being a very white neighborhood, although I mean Claudia is Asian American, and I think there's reference to some other Asian American characters, but these books do touch on race, I think, pretty well, especially considering that these books are over 20 years old now. Jessi is also a ballet dancer, so she does a lot of that, puts a lot of work into that. She has a baby brother and a younger sister, and as well, one of her first books is Jessi and the Secret Language, and in this one she learns American Sign Language so that she can talk with this new babysitting charge. And quite a lot of her other books also touch on sign language and how her involvement with her deaf child gives her a different perspective on things, and she gets them involved in like a dance recital in one of them. Do I remember which one? Maybe it's in this first one, actually. I do like the cover of Jessi Ramsey Pet Sitter just because it's got all sorts of animals on it. I think perhaps the first Jessi book I got was Jessi's Babysitter. So in this one, her auntie moves in with them and is kind of meant to be looking after her, which Jessi doesn't really enjoy because in the past she's been looking after her younger brother and sister herself, and she's a babysitter. Why should she need a babysitter? That's what she thinks. But eventually she comes to get along with her auntie, of course, because all of these books have really great lessons for kids. I know Jessi and the Awful Secret touches on anorexia, I believe. Maybe I made that up. But lots of other ones have big topics. So this is Jessi's Wish, which is about Jessi babysitting for a girl with cancer. And in Happy Holidays, Jessi, which is one of these ones I haven't read, I know that there is a car crash and her baby brother is hurt somewhat. So that's another kind of serious topic. And then the only other babysitter is Abby, which I don't know much about, except that Abby is a twin. Her twin sister is called something that also starts with A. I've forgotten. And I think she's also Jewish. Those are the only facts I've managed to absorb about Abby. I think perhaps also she's a bit of a disaster, but I might have just made that up. One day I'll get around to reading this book. One day. And maybe I'll find some other Abby books around. So that's pretty much all the books. The only ones I haven't really talked about at all are the super specials. I know for a fact that the first super special I got was Babysitter's Winter Vacation, where they go to this snow lodge with their school and they all have different adventures. I also really like, so in the main books and in these books, whenever it's from a character's perspective, there's always like a little written bit at the beginning of the chapters, and all the different characters have different writing styles. I remember I always liked Stacey's handwriting the best because Stacey would put little hearts on her eyes, and I always wanted to be cool enough to put hearts on my eyes, but I was never cool enough. I did also really like Babysitter's Island Adventure, where some of them end up shipwrecked on this island with these children, and the babysitter that thought they would be really good at dealing with disasters really struggles with it, and then the babysitter who thought they wouldn't be good at dealing with it really keeps on top of things and keeps everything together. And these ones as well had pictures in them. Yeah, like art. So that's pretty cool. I'll read these again some point too. Them on the board. I don't think I've ever read this one. You can see like up to number 10 they were always this white style, and then I guess at some point they started going all like bright and shiny. I mean, it would have been getting close to the 2000s by this point, so they would have been like 2000s, yeah, look how shiny it is. Anyway, that is my Babysitter's Club book collection. I calculated and I do own 38% of the books, which is a pretty good collection considering that I got most of them when I was a kid. I have been picking them up whenever I see them at thrift shops and book fairs for like a couple of dollars each. So hopefully my collection will slowly grow, because even though these are older books and so some of the things they deal with are not necessarily relevant now, and they talk about fax machines and VHSs and things that don't exist anymore, I still think they do deal with a lot of topics that still are relevant today. And if I ever had a middle grade type child that liked reading, I would definitely suggest they read these. Do let me know if you have read the Babysitter's Club books and if you have a bit of a collection. I'd love to know how many Babysitter's Club books you have. I've got 79, so that is the number to beat. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well and reading lots of good books, and I will see you next time.